Hello, my name's Ed Poole, and today I'm interviewing candidate for Equality and Diversity Officer for the Green Party National Executive, Cade Hatton. Hi, Cade.
I
Why did you join the Green Party, and why do you think other people should?
So why I joined the party probably goes back to my parents indoctrinating me with Star Trek from infancy. I kind of grew up with two very pretty left-wing, pretty open to diversity and campaigning on diversity when they had the chance. People who kind of raised me with a lot of the ideals that come along with Star Trek of this, you know, diversity, working together. We are stronger when we're together, and we're stronger when we're working towards a common goal. And I hope that by joining the party, we can make that world happen without needing to have World War III and a horrible nuclear holocaust first. Would be ideal. Why I think other people should join the party now. I joined the party. I mean, to a certain extent, I am still naive in some ways, but I was a very naive 16-year-old who was like, "Yeah, I'm going to ch join the party. And we're going to change the world." And 15 years later, we're still going to change the world, but I'm a little less bouncy. And I think that we are still going to change the world, and we are becoming more of a serious party to the rest of the world. We are getting more attention, we're getting more on the national stage and on the international stage to an extent. And I think that that's really vital. And other people joining will only make that voice louder. Just voting for us is great. Like, that's incredible all on its own, even if you do literally nothing else. But joining and adding your voice to all of ours makes everything better and makes the whole party stronger.
What do you think of the Green Party electoral strategy known as Target to Win?
It can work really well, and we clearly have proven that it works quite well in some situations, and when it's run properly by people who really understand how Target to Win works and how it was designed and why it was designed. When it is actually done in practice is really variable, and whether it's done properly and whether it's done in a way that actually engages with the people that you're trying to engage with. It's so variable depending on local officers and all sorts of different things. I don't like the way that it excludes disabled people. It doesn't do so explicitly, but it does so kind of by not giving a space for any disabled people to actually occupy within campaigning. So much of our campaigning is about going up and knocking on doors. Go out and walk along your street and see how many you literally can't get to the front door of. Like, so much of it is about phone canvassing. As an autistic person, phone calls are my nemesis, so I can't do that. I can do a certain amount of graphic design. I've designed things for the local party, leaflets and things in line with Target to Win. I've helped the party do things in line with Target to Win, but they were things that I had to find. There were things that someone had to go, oh, I haven't got anyone to design this. And then it took me half an hour on Canva to put together quite a nice looking leaflet. So things like that, like if we were able to run classes on how you use a Canva account and what you need to do to make a leaflet look good or what you need to do to make a social media post look good. It doesn't even need to be live training. We can just record some, fairly well done like tutorials and put them on the website. And I think that would massively help because then that would give someone who is a massive computer nerd like me and has a computer to sit at and they can design a leaflet. And that means that someone else that can go and do an hour of door knocking and canvassing that evening can go and do that hour of door knocking and canvassing that evening while you sit inside and do that graphic design. I also think, like, I've never actually seen the Target to Win document itself. I've never sat down and read it because it costs over 20 quid to get a hold of it and you can only access it physically. I really struggle to read physical things. I much prefer in a digital format because I can highlight things or I can change the font or I can make it bigger or smaller, even if I have to copy and paste the contents of a PDF into eCaliber or something, I can actually access online documents so much more than I can physical ones. So right now, I don't think very highly of it, but with very small and I don't think significant changes, we can make it much, much better and more inclusive for everyone. I don't just think that for disabled people. I think we also need to make sure we're including the global majority Greens and Muslim Greens and Jewish Greens and making sure that actually we're not just going, this is how we win elections that are voted for by white British people. Like, we don't want to be in that situation. So I think we want to make sure that it is actually fully inclusive and encompassing of all communities and how we do community organising differently in different spaces.
What is your feeling on electoral pacts?
I think it's possible if there was a party that consistently showed it had at least similar values to us. Like if this new Jeremy Corbyn Zara Sultana party actually becomes a party and actually becomes a force that isn't just there's a couple of people in half of the seats that might be able to give it a go as a paper candidate. I mean, actually, they end up finding a form of momentum. They end up actually gaining membership from Labour, where the only difference is that they are focused on workers' rights and we're more focused on the environment. Absolutely. If that is literally our only difference, is that they're focused on workers' rights and we're focusing on environment, 100%. That's completely theoretical. They don't exist yet. Um, I think they can sometimes work for smaller local parties. We had a brief pact with our local Lib Dems because we both of the local parties knew we didn't really have enough people to fill candidates in all of our local council seats. We didn't have enough active members to even get paper candidates. So we ended up basically saying, right, you get your target seat. We won't campaign in that one. We'll keep our target seat. You don't campaign in that one. And that worked fine. But then there are other Lib Dem local parties that say, vote for us. The Green Party can't win when we absolutely can win. So I think it's so variable that I don't think that we can have a real policy on it. Certainly not for an MP level kind of situation. I think we need to make sure that anything that we are working on, anything that we are putting out energy towards, it needs to be for us. And not for another party, because if they're that in line with us, they should just join us.
How do we make a bigger impact with the media?
I've already seen it working over the last, I'd say 2 years, especially, while with Zach and Zoe and other people really getting into social media and kind of not even necessarily just it being Zach himself, but other people using Zach and Carla and other kind of people at various different rallies or speaking in various different places to really spotlight our policies and spotlight what we believe in and what we stand for and what we stand behind. And I've seen that really resonating with a lot of people. We know that getting like breaking into the wider media is hard until we get a lot more notice generally. I think a charismatic leader is important, having someone that can really lead us directly, and can entertain to an extent, because that's a lot of what people watch things like PMQs for. Like, you don't watch PMQs for a serious answer to a question that you have. Like, I've been watching it since I was at college doing politics A level, and I remember asking Ed Miliband when he'd just been elected leader at a quick Q&A he did, that my politics tutor bust us all out to. Can you please try and make PMQs a little bit more, I don't know, professional? And he said, yes, that's one of my main goals. It has just gotten worse. Like, it's just people hooting at each other for most of the time. Um, so I think we need to recognize that a huge part of how we really lead our party and how we lead our party into more media is through that charisma, is through that getting more popular. And he is getting around. Like, it is kind of constant that he is constantly hitting the media because that's what you need to do. Like, to get noticed when it's not being funded by the people already in power. You have to just keep at it, keep at it, keep at it until something cracks. And I think something is starting to crack.
How do we attract non-white members and voters to the Green Party?
So I think we need to center global majority Greens in that really, and finding out why like our policies aren't already on their own connecting to non-white members in the same way that they sort of are white members, and whether there's a kind of whether we are struggling to connect because we are white on the whole, the people that go out and campaign, or whether it's because our policies are too white. I think we're having to. They had to make a policy working group to bring a racism motion to conference about bringing in anti-racist policies to our disciplinary process, I believe. And um, like they had to make a policy working group for that. They couldn't just do it as the global majority Greens, who I think have renamed themselves from Greens of Colour, but I'm not 100% sure. I saw someone say that. I want to trust them, but our systems are so old, nothing gets updated very quickly. Um, and I think supporting and platforming global majority Greens, making sure that we are actually providing training on things like unconscious bias and like what racism actually looks like for the day-to-day person of color in this country, and kind of more widely explain and show how our policies benefit everyone. I think right now we talk about a lot about a wealth tax and about how we wouldn't do a lot of the things the government are currently doing, but we don't necessarily talk a huge amount about the other things that we would do that would benefit people's lives. I've barely seen anyone mention like universal basic income at all recently, which is when we're talking about benefits, when we're talking about the welfare bill, like the concept of universal basic income is massive and it could be so supportive for so many people, especially people with larger families, especially people with more cultural ties to different places. Having that kind of cushion is vital. I think that those kinds of things would be really important. I also think, in a not necessarily just about race, but in a very general marginalized communities sense, we need to choose our target seats with an eye for diversity. I know we generally go, that seat has a lot of recent council voting, or we've got really good polling in this area, and all these different kinds of things. But we then end up with, while one of our four MPs is a member of the LGBTIQ plus community, all four of them are white, and to my understanding, all four of them are also fairly middle class. We are an incredible, diverse party. Why aren't we seeing more target candidates who are members of the global majority, who are physically or otherwise disabled, who are open about those disabilities? Why aren't we seeing more people from different racial background, religious backgrounds, things like that? I think that's a really important question that we need to ask and we need to think about. Um, we're not great on our targets for these candidates. Even when we ignore target candidates, when we have our target for percentage of candidates who are LGBTIQ plus, who are women, who identify as disabled, who are from the global majority. And I think the only one that we actually hit at the general election was LGBTIQ plus, which is great. And I'm really happy that we hit that. But we need to be looking at why we didn't hit all of the other like diversity criteria that we'd set for ourselves, and look into why that is and how we can fix that. And does that mean that we need to look at prioritizing, like making it so that a shortlist has to include a person from the global majority, a person who identifies as disabled, a woman, etc. Like, we're not saying that it has to be an all diverse shortlist that you're voting from, but there has to be representation on the shortlist at the very least that you're voting on for who is representing you at the general election. Um, I think that's really vital. We already do that with the London Assembly. Like, I think we should do that for our general election as well. I think that would improve things if, we're sending members of parliament to parliament who are from the global majority. I think that would be a big a big statement to make saying, yeah, we don't have many MPs, but we made sure that we prioritise the voices of marginalised people.
How can we assure disabled people that the Green Party is listening to them?
We can start listening to them. As a disabled member, I like the entire time that I've been a member, I've been disabled. I didn't always identify as disabled, but I've always been autistic and had ADHD. So like I've experienced a lot of different ways that the party has not been particularly supportive of disabled members over the 15 years that I've been in the party. And now I'm chair of the disability group and the co-convener of the policy working group alongside Jane. And I've really experienced firsthand the ways the party's failing. I'm bringing a motion to conference to ask for a full investigation into whether or not, as an employer, we're following Disability Confident, which is an employment scheme, because I don't think that we're in actually supporting disabled people currently in work or encouraging disabled people into work with the party in line with the scheme we claim that we're in. So I think we need to do things like that. We need to have more people who openly identify as being disabled on GPEX and within the leadership team as well. It would be incredibly beneficial if our leadership and our MPs and peers would actually respond to emails sent to them. And, you know, we need to make sure that we're communicating that transparency is vital in so many of our communications and the way that the party works. So potentially going into a GPEX role, making sure that I would be communicating with everyone, making sure that I would be completely transparent in my decisions and the things that we would do as a committee and then as also on GPEX. I think we have a decent number, as far as I'm aware, of members of the disability group who are standing for various different roles, including deputy leader. And I'm really hopeful that we get a good representation of disabled people on GPEX. I think that's really vital to. You can listen as much as you want, but until you've experienced it, it can be quite difficult to really understand what the problems are and why it is so. I think there have definitely been times when members of the party have seen me reacting or seen Zionil reacting or other disabled members reacting to something being inaccessible or something excluding us specifically because we are wheelchair using disabled people. Um, like that has been happening for years. And it's really hard for me to say the party is listening to disabled people because I don't think it is. But I hope that with people on GPEX really representing disabled people's voices, and I've had a promise from John Knott that if he wins chair, then he will get better at responding to emails. So I'm hoping that he stands true to that. I'm counting that as an election promise from him. He wrote it on Facebook, so he must mean it. But I think that that's really important, making sure that when we make a decision that excludes someone, even if we didn't mean it to, when we find out that it excluded someone, we need to make sure that people are aware of why the decision was made and how we're going to avoid doing it again. And I think that's a big part of how we get disabled people to trust us as a party is to say, we did actually make a mistake. We're not just going to ignore it. We're not just going to say sorry quietly to the person that it was done to. We're going to hold up our hands and say, this happened. And it doesn't need to be public. We can do it on the members' website. We can do it in a GPEX meeting. Like, just having that accountability and saying, we're sorry, we did not, you know, in the case where I wasn't able to present the disability chapter because they didn't give me enough time to get to the lift and back onto the stage because I had to go through the sort of bowels of the venue to actually get to the stage. It felt ridiculously ironic that I was literally there to present the disability chapter and I couldn't get to the stage. They didn't give me enough time to get to the stage. Like those kinds of things, going, we're sorry that we did that. Next conference, what we're going to do is we're going to make sure that the chairs are aware. If any, we're going to check in with all of the motion proposers, which is what I'm planning on doing, and saying, do you need any extra time to get to the stage to propose your motion? Simple as, like, that's the simplest thing, and it could just be, this is part of our GPEX minutes. We're sorry that we did this. Here is our fix. Let's move on. I think that we need to start doing that, and that'll help. Sorry, that was a really long answer on that, but like, I'm quite passionate about the kind of ableism within the party at the moment.
How should we handle transphobia in the Green Party?
Outright transphobia has absolutely no place within the party. I think if someone is like coming up to me and refusing to use my pronouns properly, misgendering me, you know, all of that kind of stuff, that's not appropriate behavior at all. Making comments about, wanting to save autistic girls from being trans as an autistic trans person, like that's not acceptable. That's transphobic. That's ableist. It's there is no place for that kind of bigotry within the party. But on the flip side, I am also willing to respect gender critical people who are willing to respect me as a human being. If they're willing to go, okay, we don't agree on trans rights, but we're willing to work together. We're actually going to do work together on work around the WASPy women, the pension crisis. If we were to work together with Green Party women on that, that would be a really important thing. Like, women are more likely to be disabled. Like that is a fact, that women are more likely to become disabled, especially later on in life. Like, there are so many situations that directly impact women or are more likely to impact a disabled person if they're a woman, and all these different things. I want to be able to work with these people on that. And if they're willing to respect me as a human being and not say anything, horrifically bigoted, then I'm happy to work with them. But if they're just out, like, the first time that I ran to be the chair of the disability group, the Green Feminists sent out a note about me saying that I was trying to take over the disability group as a trans person. I was trying to make it all trans and just make it all about trans rights and nothing to do with disability anymore. I'd not said anything about trans rights in my statement. I'd not commented. It was just the mere fact that I was trans. They wanted to see me crash and burn. And I have absolutely no interest in working with those people. But if you're willing to put it to one side and just see me as a human being willing to work with you to deal with all of the other problems that the world currently has, then great. If not, then the Green Party isn't for you.
How important is social and economic class in politics?
I think it's at its core. I I'm not going to go into like deep political theory, but in my opinion, I think everything boils down to class, and specifically the upper class remaining in control. The upper class predominantly being white and cis and straight and predominantly Christian in this country, who have a huge amount of power. Everything else is it's just a way to divide us in my mind. It's saying that there is like a difference between someone who is straight and someone who is gay outside of who they find attractive is nonsensical to me. Someone that, we're trying to find the gay, like, no, we are all the same. Like, there isn't even a huge bio difference in races. Like, that was all a social construct at the very beginning. It all comes down to class. It all comes down to being able to control the working classes and make us keep working, until the rich just completely destroy the planet. Like, I dislike the working and middle class divide particularly because I don't think it helps in a lot of situations, but we can only really dismantle that when the working classes are actually united on everything else. And there's just so much, like, Reform are just capitalizing on it because they're just going, right, there are working classes, they've been riled up for ages, the Conservatives have completely screwed them over again and again and again. We can blame immigrants and refugees, people fleeing for their lives, and they've been able to capture a huge chunk of the working class in the UK based on that. We can be doing better than that because we can be saying it's not because of these people who have come here fearing for their lives, seeking a better future. It's because of those people over there holding the money. It's because of the people that have been holding the money in this country for millennia, potentially, some of them. You know, it just feels ridiculous to me. It probably comes back to I was indoctrinated to Star Trek as a baby, and like the idea that people could be okay talking to a complete alien with neon green skin and scales and a tail, but they freaked out when they saw someone a slightly different shade of their like everyone is basically just a different shade. Like just seeing a different shade of someone else and being like, ah, I can't survive this. It just baffles me. So we need to unite as working classes. We need to band together and go, capitalism isn't working. It's killing everyone and it's killing the planet. We've got we have at least a couple of working class deputy leadership candidates. And other working class. I would count myself as working class. And I know a number of other candidates across the GPEC selections would as well. And I would like to see more working class people on GPECs because, like, equity is important. And actually, working class people go, you know what? I have the time and energy, even though I'm potentially one paycheck away from being kicked out of my house. I have the time and energy to volunteer like tens of hours of my time to this party. I think that needs to be listened to as well because that they are saying I love this party so much I am willing to run myself into the ground for it, which we shouldn't let happen. We do that too much. But I still think it's important to remember that we're all volunteers. Like the only roles up for election that are getting paid are the leaders, and deputy leadership. Everyone else is in this not for personal benefit, but hopefully to help the party. And yeah, we all need to work together to make things better.
What other issues are important to you?
So the environment was part of why I joined. When I first joined the party, I was veggie and I became vegan for a while because of a Federation of Young European Greens event that I went to over in Spain to learn about grassroots organizing. Um, and I think like really learning about the impact that like I'd always been left wing, like brought up pretty like my parents kind of swung between voting for Labour and voting for Green the whole time I was growing up. So I was always brought up with this kind of strong left wing ideal. Um, but when I was 16, I think it was just purely that I really cared about the environment. Like I was very like I was so excited back then and I was so desperate to change the world and make the world a better place and save the world because of the climate crisis and we didn't have long to get it fixed. And we have even less, there are all of these I watch a lot of sci-fi and there are so many of these future apocalyptic, post-apocalyptic worlds. I think even Judge Dredd probably counts as this of the only green places are within settlements that only really rich people get to live in. And all of the poor people live in poverty in a barren wasteland. And like that is a image that comes up a lot in sci-fi, in post-apocalyptic stuff, because people can see the writing on the wall. If we end up in that situation, if we end up where the world cannot compensate for the harm we are causing it, and we end up having, millionaires spend all of their money building an incredible compound where all of the water for the entire region gets pumped, like I can see that happening. And it's really scary. And kind of understanding how saving the environment and stopping capitalism from destroying us all are so intrinsically linked together was what made me join the party. And part of what made me stick around, I learned about what BDS was the first time I went to my first ever Green Party conference in 2010, and there was a big sign, and I was like, I don't know what that means. And I kind of went up to someone, this nerdy little kid with like a little notebook, writing everything down, being like, what does that mean? And like, I didn't. It's one of those things I'd not really heard about until then. And it astonishes me that I hadn't really heard about Palestine until I was 16 years old. But like that was one of the things, like knowing like the Green Party is standing up for people's human rights. It doesn't matter whether they would like us, whether they would want to vote for us, whether they would even, get along with us. It's because these people are being hurt and oppressed, and that was 15 years ago. And now we're in this situation now, like, yeah, I'm kind of sort of swiftly moving on to another point, but like the atrocities that have been committed upon the people of Palestine is just I can't comprehend it, just the horror of it. But knowing that our party really stands for the people of Palestine and against what Israel is doing to Palestine and has been doing to Palestine for a very long time, like that gives me a huge amount of hope that we are this strong voice. And I've mentioned, it's probably kind of apparent, and I've said this on Blue Sky and Twitter, but I am planning on voting for Zach, for leader. But his voice being one of, if not the strongest in the party, condemning Israel and saying condemning Israel is not anti-Semitic. Condemning Israel is pointing out that a genocide is being committed against an entire people. Like that, and being that shining beacon is really important, I think, and being able to say this doesn't represent me or my people or my faith. This represents something I do not recognize. Is such a strong statement for us as a party to have, and it's one that I want to be able to stand behind, as well. And there's so many other issues that are important, but I don't want to keep waffling on because I'll go through half of our policy background. I'm very passionate about centre boarding buses that go directly into the disabled space. That's a very quick issue I'm very passionate about. All of those London buses need to be all across the country. They are perfect and they need to be everywhere.
Why do you think people should vote for you, and what will you do if you win?
This is one that I kind of written a couple of notes for each of the questions just so that I try to stay on topic. Um, but I'm really passionate about getting the party up to a much better standard for people from marginalized backgrounds. Right now, I think that standard is very low within the party. I think we celebrate a win even when it is barely a win, because for people who are really marginalized within this party, it's deeply problematic. And because we spend, I, as a trans person, I am fed up about talking about trans rights. As a trans person who is tomorrow hosting a meeting, probably not tomorrow in this interview, but tomorrow hosting it about my trans health reform motion. I'm holding a consult session, but I don't want to talk about trans stuff a lot. Like my hope is that that motion gets to the conference and gets voted on, gets passed, and I just can move on to my next focus. So it won't take up any of my time on E&D. But I'm tired about constantly having to bait my own space in the party and my own rights within the party and within the world as a trans human being. I want to get on with actually making a difference and using all of our energy for something good rather than just constant sniping at each other about like, oh, this won't get me suspended, or they won't be able to say that this was an expellable thing. Like, it feels so juvenile, and I just want to get past it and just get some work done. So that's what I want to do, is just get some work done. I want to make sure that all of the special interest groups are properly supported in the way that they need. I want to make sure that one of the things I really want to make sure is that special interest groups, if they want, are given the support and access to migrate over to Teams in a way that is supported by the tech team. Because right now, there we used to have green spaces. Now there is no kind of, it can only be the website, which is always publicly facing. So if we ever had minutes for a meeting that were of a more personal or private nature, if we were talking about someone's personal experiences with lesbophobia or acephobia or something like that, and we wanted to make sure that it was recorded in minutes, but we didn't necessarily want someone to be able to access that from the public, there's nowhere for that to go. So those are things that I would want to really work on is making sure the infrastructure is there and kind of do the boring management stuff so that like the other special interest groups would be able to actually get on with the stuff they want to get on with. Like that's kind of my vision for this role. I would obviously convene the Equality and Diversity Committee, and I wouldn't use my vote on that committee except for breaking a tie. I think that's a really important thing is that I am listening to the members of that committee, which include all of the special interest groups being represented. That is their voice. And I would be taking that voice to GPEX and I would be making sure that that voice was heard. Um, we have so many problems with the disciplinary system right now, but one of the biggest ones we have is training, a lack of training in both how to deal with these difficult topics, but also how to process complaints and how to deal with safe spaces and ensure that spaces are safe so that people feel comfortable disclosing things and all sorts of different things. So I've got kind of a big list of things that, kind of walking around kicking the tires. I can't say like exactly how I would fix things right now because for one, I have no idea what our budget looks like. I know vague numbers that people have kind of thrown out, but those documents are confidential for a reason. I wouldn't be seeing them until I was on GPEX if I get elected. So I don't want to say I would offer every single special interest group training on all sorts of different things because I have no idea what the funding would look like for that. But I would want to support all of the special interest groups to do something like what the LGBTIQ plus Greens under RIA did, which was develop an inclusion training workshop where they would go to local parties or regional parties or other groups within the party and do that training. I'd want to be able to put the infrastructure in place to support all of the special interest groups to be able to provide that training. And help to support them to kind of set this is what you get paid, and if the local party can't pay, then the regional party pays, and if the regional party can't pay, then the central party pays because it's important work that needs to be paid for. I'm not going to go through the entire list of things that I would do, but yeah, making sure that everyone in the party is supported to do what they want to do within the party. Something that I really want to do is work with people to help them make their motions do what they want to do. It's it's really a strange kind of paradoxical situation that anyone can propose a motion, but not anyone can get a motion to conference. And I want to make it so that anybody wants to get their motion to conference is able to get their motion to conference. Because that's how we change things within the party, in a fundamental way. We can do things inch by inch in other ways, but it's another part of why I love the party. Is I actually really love conference. I know it's sort of a chaotic nightmare for 4 days, but I miss it when I get home. And being on conferences committee kind of adds to that stress a little bit. But seeing people's ideas and seeing the collaboration that can come from everyone working together to try and find the best policy, I just love, and I want to make sure that I enable that to the best of my ability. So that's one of my currently trying to help various people get motions up to scratch, but it's something I really enjoy doing. I mentioned before the interview side that I'm a bit of a nerd, and I've mentioned multiple times through this interview ways in which I'm a nerd. So I hope that has shone through. I want to do my best for the party, and I hope that people see that and vote for me.
Cade, thanks very much.
Thank you so much.